Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to r/EntitledPeople, where people believe that they can do whatever they want, whenever they want, because they're above everybody. And in today's episode, guys, Karens are at it again, all I can say. I hope you enjoy the crazy stories, don't shake your heads too hard, and as always, you can send your post to this email right here. We're diving in. So I used to be a waitress for about 8 years, and I have far too many stories, but this one is one of my favorites. So I was working at a pub as a supervisor, and I had a personal alcohol license. As in the UK, you have to have someone on site with one, and we have to abide by certain laws. Our pub also has a premise license, which can also dictate what we can or can't do. Failure to do so can mean the loss of your license, the premises license, and a personal fine if you're caught. Also, you can lose your job. Now, the issue is, these two can sometimes contradict one another. This is important later. So we had a family come in one evening wanting dinner. One of the kids was 15 or 16, and she'll be known as the entitled kid. So I sit the family down, told them the specials, and asked them what they would like to drink. The mother, the Karen of the story, orders a lime and soda, Dad orders a pint of lager, and Mini Karen orders a small glass of rosé wine. Now, you've all been to restaurants. At our pub, if you look younger than 25 years old, we would ask you for ID. So I ID the daughter, which is where everything starts. I turn to the daughter, and that's when the mom says, "Don't you look at her. You don't need to see her ID." I say to Karen, unfortunately, it's our policy to ID anyone who looks younger than 25, which your daughter does. The dad then says she's 16, which by law allows her a small glass of wine. Now, you remember when I said about contradictions between law and license? This was one of them. By UK law, you're allowed to have a small glass of wine or half a pint of lager with your meal, if you're with a parent or guardian and you're 16 or 17 years old. Most premise licenses do prohibit this, as it's hard to prove if you're 16 or 17, as you don't go out with ID usually. The pub I worked at prohibited it, so it didn't matter if she was 16, she wouldn't be allowed it. To which I say, I'm very sorry, but I still can't give her the wine, as it's prohibited in our license to sell alcohol to her. We have a great line of mocktails if she'd prefer. And that's when Karen says, "No, I said she'll have the wine." I tell her, no, I will not be selling her any wine, as it could cost me my job and this place could be shut down if an inspector came in. Of course, not all entitled people have to shout to be entitled. Sometimes it's the calm, not my problem attitude that makes an entitled person what they are. That was this woman. So the Karen says, "I don't care about that, just bring her what she asked for." At this point, the daughter looks at me and says, "I want wine. They said I could have it, and that's what I'll get." Now, I knew where this was going. I had to stand my ground, so I say, "I'm sorry, but I can't sell you any wine. Is there anything else you'd like?" The Karen then starts bitching to her husband, telling him to make me give their daughter wine. Exasperated that I wouldn't bring their darling girl a glass of wine. The dad then says to me, "Look, it's her birthday. Is there any way you could overlook this just once?" His words were nice, but his tone was expectant that I'd relent. To which I say, "No, I'm sorry." The Karen then throws up her hands in exasperation and says, "You've made me want a glass of wine now, so I'll have one instead, and she'll have a Coke." Hearing her say that, I say, "Thank you. I'm sorry again though, I just want to make it clear that the wine's for you and not for her. I may have to ask you to leave if she's seen drinking the wine." Hearing me say that, the Karen glares at me and she says, "Whatever." So off I go to make the drinks. I come back and take their food order. I then put it through to the kitchen and ask one of my members of staff to keep an eye on them, while I went for a quick break. So I come back from my break to see the daughter drinking the wine and the mom drinking the Coke, and I was pissed. I start walking over there, and that's when Karen notices me and she tries switching back the glasses. I walk up to them and say, "Hi there, folks. Now, I don't want to cause a scene, but I did say when taking your drink order that your daughter couldn't drink wine on the premises, which you indicated that you understood what the consequences may be." At that, Karen says, "I don't remember that. Darling, did you?" She then looks to her husband, and her husband says, "Nope, I don't recall her saying anything like that. And just like that, Karen had a sneer on her face that said, "And what are you gonna do about it?" If she had been decent, I would have just given them another warning, but because she was a bitch, I took another route. I say to her, whether you remember or not, I remember saying it, and unfortunately because of this, I have the right to ask you to pay for your food and drink and to leave. And that's when the dad blows up and says, "No, we're not leaving, and I refuse to pay. How dare you treat us like this? I demand to speak to a manager." I then say, "I am the manager tonight, so you'll have to deal with me. Please calm down, sir, as you're disturbing everyone." At this point, more and more people began viewing our little spectacle. None more so than this elderly gentleman and his son, who were at the next table. The old man sticks up for me and says, "How dare you, young man? I've heard enough. This lady explained that your daughter could not have a glass of wine, and you defied that, putting her job and this place at risk for your own selfishness." The dad turns to the old man and says, "F off, old man. If I want to lecture, I'd call my own dad." I say to the dad, "Sir, if you don't calm down, I will have no choice but to have you forcibly removed by the police if necessary." And this made the dad balk. And the mom wasn't having any of it, and she says, "We're not leaving. We will leave when we want. And you will bring us the rest of that bottle of wine as compensation for this rudeness." Hearing that, I laughed. To think I would do that was ridiculous and delusional to say the least. I say to her, "I'm sorry, but I'm done being patient. Please pay and leave. I'll have your food packed up, ready to go." I then start to turn and leave, and that's when the dad grabs my wrist and he squeezed it hard, telling me, "Don't you go anywhere. She said we will leave when we're ready." A bit scared at this point, I struggled with what to say until he yelled out, a scream of pain. The old man had told my employee to call the police, and he had struck the dad with his cane to get him to release my arm. His son had taken up beside him, and there was a few people shouting at them to just go. A little while later, 2 officers arrived and took my statement. The family obviously told a different story, which was proven false by the CCTV and its audio. The parents were charged with endangerment of a child, as the daughter was only 14 years old and also resisting arrest. They had to pay for the food and the drinks, and I got a well-earned day off. The thing is, if they had a nice meal at home, it would have been fine, as it's legal to drink alcohol in a private home. Their daughter could have had a whole bottle of rosé if she wanted. Instead, they put up a fight and police were involved. Yeah, I have to agree with OP, like, why put up a fight to that extent? Like, if you know your kid can't legally drink alcohol in public, like, why push it to that point? Guys, I have no idea why the parents thought it was so important that their precious daughter have a glass of wine at the restaurant. And the fact that the truth came out and she was only 14 years old, like, that just makes things way worse. So this is a story from my retail days. A little backstory. I'm a full-time wheelchair user, and at the time, I worked in a big supermarket chain on the tills. The majority of my customers didn't know I was a wheelchair user, as my chair wasn't visible while I served them. I would often get customers asking me to help them pack at the end of the till, and most times when I explained that I'm a wheelchair user so I can't stand that long, they would understand. Plus, I could call for one of my colleagues for assistance. Well, not this woman, let's call her Karen. So on this day, it was a pretty busy day, and I have 3 people in my queue at the time. Other colleagues had upwards of 5+ people on their tills, but I was the fastest. And that's when Karen enters my queue with a very large shopping cart full to the brim with items. Before her is an elderly woman in a mobility scooter. So I serve the woman in front of her, but first I say, "Hi, I won't keep you waiting too long." At that, Karen just huffs and she taps her fingers on the conveyor belt. I serve the elderly woman, packing her one bag as I go and hobbling around to put it in her basket, as she couldn't stand. I also didn't want to call a colleague over one bag. So the lady leaves and says thank you, and then it's Karen's turn. The conversation goes something like this. I say to her, "Hey, how are you today? Did you find everything you're looking for?" You know, customer service stuff. At that, Karen says, "Yes, thank you. Listen, I'm in a hurry, so could you pack my bags fast for me?" To which I respond, "I'm sorry, unfortunately I can't stand up for long periods of time. So although I can help you as we go, I can't pack the whole cart for you. But I'm happy to call a colleague over to help." Karen then looks at me and says, "You're just like every other lazy teenager out there. You're just like the rest of them. I haven't got time to wait for anyone to come. Just do your damn job and pack my bags." At that I say, "I sincerely apologize, ma'am, but I'm a wheelchair user, so I can't stand up for long periods or walk very well to load your cart." Karen then raises her voice and says, "You liar! I saw you pack that lady's bags and load her cart." She then looks at me as if she's caught me in a crime. She then goes on and says, "Besides, I don't see a wheelchair." I tell her I did pack that lady's bag, however, she only had one to pack and she couldn't do it herself. My wheelchair is right over there, pointing to the chair. As I said, I'm happy to arrange for a colleague to come help you. Karen then screams, "I want to see your supervisor. This is terrible customer service. Why would you work here if you can't do your job properly?" That's when I call over my supervisor, and Karen in a sickly sweet voice says, "Hi, lovely to meet you. I'm so sorry to bother you, but unfortunately, this employee right here is giving me terrible customer service. I think you need to have a word with her." My supervisor says, "That doesn't sound like her. What exactly is the issue?" Karen then asked, "She works here, right? She's an employee who serves customers, right?" My supervisor says, "Yes, she is, ma'am." Karen says, "Well, she refuses to pack my bags, even though she did it for the last customer." My supervisor tells her, unfortunately, she can't do the packing. However, I'm not busy and I'm happy to help. Karen then suddenly realizes that I was telling the truth. She then looks at me and her face turns to a look of disgust. And that's when she says, "Ugh, I would like to be served by someone else then. I'm not having some cripple touching my food. This is disgusting. People like that shouldn't be in public." My supervisor's had enough and with a very angry tone says, "How dare you? You'll apologize to my colleague right now or you'll be banned from the store for harassment." Karen then screams, "I want to see your manager right now." My supervisor says gladly. They walk off, so I didn't hear the rest of the conversation. However, my manager loved me, so the woman was made to leave her full cart of shopping, and she was banned from the store until she apologized for her comments. And wouldn't you know, we never saw her again. Yeah, so first off, disgusting behavior, guys. Like, the way she treated OP was terrible. And she definitely needs to learn some manners. And second, it's funny how Karen kept saying that she was in a hurry, but she'll spend like 10 minutes arguing with staff rather than packing her own bags. Like, some people just love to cause a scene. And it does suck to know that there's people like that in this world, who will say ridiculous things like that in front of people's faces. And if you guys thought what Karen said in that one was absurd, listen to this next one. Okay, so this happened a few years ago, and it still boils my blood to this day. I was working as a cart pusher at a large grocery store. I had been there for a while. The managers wanted to have young people work as cart pushers, and we didn't have machinery to move the carts. Just our own strength and a cart rope to wrangle them to keep them from escaping. It was a really hot day when this absolute Karen walks in. She was the Karen of Karens. She was sporting the classic "can I talk to the manager" haircut, giant expensive sunglasses, and a bright neon pink tracksuit. So she saunters in, looking every which way with a look of impatience, before her gaze landed on me. The woman then tipped down her sunglasses and she demanded to see the manager. And then she informed me why she wanted to see him. She said that my coworker, who was a very sweet girl, used the wrong tone of voice with her when telling her what to do, and that she was filing a complaint and that hopefully my coworker will get fired. It turns out, when Karen was figuring out where to put her cart, one that would not fit in the cart corrals as it had a child seat on it, she asked one of my coworkers where to put it, and my coworker told her. Now, one thing about my coworker is she's obviously disabled. Anyone paying the least bit of attention could see that. She had actually been hired through a service that helps and trains people like her to get jobs. Part of the disability came with a heavy speech impediment, and my coworker had a hard time getting her words out. So when she did, her voice stuttered, she sounded strained, loud, and monotonous. I politely told Karen this, that my coworker has a speech impediment. And then she pushes her sunglasses up and she snobbily says, "I don't care if she does. If she can't talk to customers properly, she shouldn't be working here. Besides, it sounds rude. She shouldn't talk." And then she marches her obnoxious, neon pink tracksuit wearing self to the manager's office. My coworker came in a few seconds later. She was anxious, in tears, and I gave her a hug. To my knowledge, she actually did get in trouble for this, as the Karen had blown the entire situation out of proportion, as Karens do. But thankfully my coworker wasn't fired. I'm still disappointed in my manager, and I hope the Karen gets run over by a line of carts. Tire marks would be an improvement on her face. Guys, what an awful entitled woman, right? Like, I feel so bad for OP's coworker for having to deal with that Karen on that day. And as for the she shouldn't talk comments, no Karen, you shouldn't talk, because you sound 1,000 times worse than OP's coworker ever could. Some friggin' people, I tell you. Today, I went yard sailing with my parents. This is the time of year when all the old folks are cleaning out their homes and putting all their stuff out. I love a good bargain when I see it, and I need books cheaply for my classroom. Anyway, I always tag along to help my parents, but I also look for my own things. So we pull up to the first house. I have $30, so not much. My parents have a couple of 10s and 20s, along with my dad's typical pocket of various change. I notice a cute wallet and remember in the back of my head that the one I have and love is falling apart. So I pick it up and go ask one of the women there. Of the two women there, the woman who apparently owns the wallet asks for 75 cents. So I say, okay, and go give her the money. That's when the woman starts shaking her head, saying that she can't take my $10, and she says I need to buy something else if I want change. I then explain to the woman that that's the smallest bill I have. I show her that I only have a 20 and a 10. I told her I can't make the purchase otherwise. The woman then gets mad, and she stamps inside the house because she has to make change. Now I did feel a little bad, so I looked for my parents to see if I could borrow $1 so the lady wouldn't be so upset. The other woman sitting there, I guess felt sorry for me, goes on to tell me that I shouldn't pay much mind to the other woman, that she's a good-for-nothing cheapskate. At that, I chuckle, and then she explains more, saying how that woman wiggled her way onto the woman's property this morning to have her own sale, instead of paying the $5 fee to the homeowners association, even though half the stuff on the lawn was hers. The woman then returns with her wallet, and there's enough singles to house and feed a stripper for a week. She then thrusted $9 at me saying, "That's all you get. Get out." Now I know she said it was 75 cents, but at that point I was just annoyed at how rude she is that I just put my money away. The woman's still glaring at me. She's watching my wallet as if looking for smaller bills. I then leave and find my parents walking back towards me. A normal person would think that's over, but boy was I wrong. We hit a few more yard sales, and that's when I hear a familiar voice loudly saying, "Don't you sell to her, she's gonna take all your change." And that's when I look to see that the woman who had sold me the wallet is right there pointing at me, to one of the homeowners. The man she's speaking to is about 60 to 70 years old. He looks very confused, and he says something along the lines of, "Good for you." He then walks off, and I turn away from this crazy bat. You would think that would be it, but of course not. I go to grab something off the table, but the woman grabs it before me. I shrug it off and try to grab for something else, and she pulls that out of my hands. Finally, I grab for one other thing I definitely didn't want, and she does it once more. At that, I roll my eyes, but I don't say anything. Now, normally, I can be a confrontational person, but I can see she's getting more upset that I won't say anything to her. She eventually leaves when she sees us go to another yard sale, leaving everything she had grabbed there. Finally, after her following us to 3 more yard sales and pulling the same nonsense, I grab a box of books and go pay. She doesn't attempt to do anything, as I think she realized how heavy books are. I then get out my wallet to pay, and that's when she starts her "don't sell to her" nonsense. She apparently did it to the wrong neighbor, as this older woman looks at her with her hands on her hips and says, "Lady, you need to leave my property. I've watched you harass this girl for 3 houses. And for what reason? Because she gave you a big bill? You need to grow up. It's a garage sale. You're lucky she even made that purchase." At this, the woman goes quiet and I chuckle. And that's when the older woman continues and says, "Now get your ass off my property before I call the cops. You are way out of line and you're causing a whole bunch of ruckus. And if you bother that girl once more, I'm gonna call the cops for her. She ain't done a thing to you. She's probably half your age and you're acting half of hers. Now go on, get." The woman seems reluctant to leave, but she gets in her car after the woman handed her tail to her. The older woman lets me make my purchase. Later on, my mom asked me in the car what that was about. I recount this story and I can see my mom is getting upset. She's more confrontational than I am. I told her to not get upset as it's already handled, and I didn't say much of anything. It was probably a good thing it didn't involve my mother because honestly, my mother probably would have been a lot more colorful in telling her what she could go do with herself. Yeah, I can't believe the woman followed OP around all because OP had her break a 10 for some change, guys. Like, people be a little bit too crazy. Like, just think about the potential sales she lost out on by following OP for all that time. And the nerve of that woman to keep OP's 25 cents. How dare you, lady? So here's some background. My sister and I have never had a great relationship. Growing up with her was 50 shades of bonkers, and I have a million stories. But in the interest of fairness, I should mention that my sister very likely has 2 or 3 personality disorders, including narcissistic personality disorder. Now, we don't know for sure because my parents never got her diagnosed or treated, and my mom never saw through her BS until the last few years. Never underestimate the denial that comes with parental love. Anyway, on with the story. So a few years ago, my mom insisted on a vacation with her daughters to Disney World. I had given her quite the scare a few months prior as I had been attacked at work and I was seriously hurt. I'm a medic, it happens. I required an uncommon knee surgery from it and then had the misfortune of developing pneumonia after the surgery, during which my lung collapsed. I spent 12 days in the hospital and they had to do surgery to open my chest and fix my lung, and then I was put in chest tubes. They made it very clear to her that I was very ill, but she could only fly in for the weekend after my surgery. The whole thing snapped her into an existential crisis and she wanted to spend more time with us. I'm not gonna tell the mama no, so we head down there. On arrival, my mom pulls me aside and tells me that my sister started smoking, and tells me to bring my inhaler with us every day. Things were typical until about day 3. My sister would have the occasional fits if she didn't get her way, and we would have to deal with the aftermath. However, on day 3, she woke up in a foul mood. My sister bitched about everything, from breakfast, to lines, to her walking pace, and mid-afternoon, she again wanted to stop for a smoke before getting on a ride. During her smoke breaks, Mom and I usually sat down nearby, but we were far away so we wouldn't get sick. We never once told her that she couldn't smoke, we just stayed away from it. That was enough before, but not today. The whole time my sister was smoking, she glared at us. And suddenly, she stomps up and the conversation goes as follows. So my sister comes up to us and says, "I can't believe you guys won't sit with me while I smoke. You're being such bitches about this." My mom says to her, "Well, your sister just got over a serious problem with her lungs." To which my sister says, "Whatever, she's just milking it." I say to her, "My lung collapsed. I have an 8-inch scar on my back and 3 on my side. You've seen them. I don't exactly have to milk it, it sucked." She then says, "I wasn't talking to you." My mom then sighs, exhausted, and says, "You can smoke, but your sister can't be around it, she'll get sick." At this point, my sister starts scream crying and says, "You always take her side." At this point, I'm aware of the stares and now everything's uncomfortable, so I say, "Hey, you have to stop screaming. You're 33 years old, grow up." And seriously, it's entirely normal for non-smokers to not want to sit by smokers. My sister then says, "You're just trying to stir up drama. You never ever support me in anything. You're such a selfish, horrible person." To which I respond, "Because I want to breathe." She then says to me, "I hope you do have an asthma attack and you die this time." She then stomps off in the direction to the hotel. So yeah, no flashy ending, no clapping, just awkward, pity stares from parents of toddlers who behave better than my adult sister. She is getting better, and some of her crazy is down to untreated mental illness and her personality disorder. But it's wild having to deal with entitled people in your own family. Yeah, so entitlement to the max. How dare you not sit by me while I'm puffing these cancer sticks? You never support me in anything I do. Like, if taking up smoking is something she considers needing loving support for, yikes, I don't even know what to say. Like, that's something someone says when they want to be a movie star or a dancer or something, not starting smoking when you're 33 years old. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our slash entitled people. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. I hope you didn't shake your heads too hard, and if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/I don't work here lady, where a Karen mistakes OP for a police officer, and she tries to get him arrested in the most absurd way ever. Guys, go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.